this is Brock Meyer, and I want to share an encouraging word with you today from the life of King David. King David is the one that we have the most context of Scripture about. He's right up there with Jesus, the amount that we know about the life and the character of King David. But long before he became a king, he was a shepherd boy. And after, he had this unbelievable moment of wiping out the lion and the giant. You think that he's going to ascend to the top. And it just didn't go that way. Has life ever gone a different route than maybe you hoped it would? Or maybe you thought you would ascend much faster than what you actually did? And sometimes we've got to have a little pivot of perspective when we see that things don't go the way that we really hoped they would. David, after he shows up, and King Saul doesn't want to take on Goliath, but then David does, and he shows up with a slingshot at a sword fight, and he wipes out the enemy giant, Goliath. Everybody's going bonkers. David gets the princess as his wife. He now is the son-in-law of King Saul after he marries his daughter, Michal. He's best friends with King Saul's son, Jonathan. They weren't just friends. David's now in the family. And the song that used to go out that all of the women would sing was, Saul has killed his thousands. But then it turned and it says, but David has killed his 10,000s. That David is now the man. At a young age, even as a teenage boy, David is anointed to become the king. Yet he's got to sit on the sidelines until it's his time. He was anointed but not yet appointed. And during that time, what was going on in his life? As the cheering section got louder and louder for King David, the insecurity inside of King Saul got bigger and bigger. He starts to pursue King David, or he was little boy David at the time, until the point of death. He's trying to wipe out David. One time, even sitting at the dinner table, he throws a spear at David, trying to kill him. David's now on the run, and he runs to this cave, the cave of Adullam. And inside this cave, he is wrestling with God. He's, where are you, God? My enemies are over my head. And literally, if you would look at the cave of Adullam, it's kind of tucked into the cleft of this rock. And his enemies, he could look up and see thousands of soldiers literally over top. He pours out his guts in these psalms saying, God, why won't you rescue me? Where are you, God? I just want to encourage us, perhaps our vision isn't always aligned with God's vision. Or we do have God's vision, but our timing, we're just a little early in the process. And to have a perspective pivot is always so helpful. In 1 Samuel chapter 22 and verse 1, it says that David had left Gath and that he was on the run, and he hides out in the cave of Adullam. When his father and his brothers found out, they went to be with him. I'll tell you, we all need some brothers in this battle with us. We all need those fathers and mentors, those mamas, those sisters, to jump in our cave with us. I just want to encourage you to have a strong support group, to have those that are going through it with you, that whenever you're in your cave and you thought you were getting the castle, but instead you got the cave, that you would have people to dive into those dark, hidden, cold places with you and welcome them in. And David's dad, Jesse, and his brothers jump in the cave with him. Recently, we've been talking about this movie, Tombstone. Tombstone is this group that come together and they head off to Tombstone, Oklahoma. It's Wyatt Earp and his brothers and that weird old Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday, you never quite know what he's going to do or what he's going to say, but he's definitely the guy that you want in your corner. You don't fully trust him, but you trust him enough to do something crazy, and you'll probably end up on the winning side. So Wyatt Earp, they're taking on the Cowboys, and he's going to have a one-on-one little gunslinger here. And instead of showing up, Doc Holliday sneaks in. And Doc Holliday's the one that's going to fight the Cowboys because he's just a friend like that. And so they go around, they're circling each other, and he says, say when. And he pulls out his gun, puts one in the guy, then the cowboy, and he says, I'll be your Huckleberry, right? He just kind of comes in, and I'll be the guy that will stand in here for you. I'll be your friend when nobody else has. Recently, I heard a story of a guy that says in high school he was running the football, and the other team stops him, and they tackle him, and they're standing over the top of him, and they're just yelling and spitting and talking trash. We stopped you, and all this sort of stuff. He said, I had it. I couldn't take any more, and I popped up and grabbed his face mask and just started swinging. Both sides are tackling and jumping on top, and he says, my brother was standing on the sidelines, and he whips his helmet, and he takes off running and dives on top of the pile. I hope that he was screaming, I'll be your Huckleberry, as he jumps on top. We need those brothers to show up whenever we're in this cave, whenever we're in this hard time. And please welcome those people. In 1 Samuel chapter 22, it goes on and it says, then there was this ragtag group, those that were discontent, discouraged, and in debt, all gather themselves around David. And there was about 400 in all. What a bummer. Because when I'm sucking wind and when I'm going through it, I don't want more discouraged people showing up. I want some life givers. I want some people that are going to bring some life to me. And yet David gets this ragtag group. And what's so awesome about this is not just how they started, but it's how they finished. And you just got to work with who's with you. You just got to work with whoever's around you. And David just kind of looks at it and says, man, I wish I had these kings in the castle. I wish I had these princes in the palace. But this is who I've got. I've got a bunch of cavemen. And he starts to work with those that are around him. And he pours in. We see that David, out of this group of 400, there was 37 men that become these great warriors that the Bible talks about. And specifically, it talks about the 30, and even more specific, the 3. But people like Abishai, who were wiping out, the enemy, killed 300 people at once, or Benaiah that chases a lion to its death. These were guys that were over the guard of King David. He poured into them. He raised up lion killers. He raised up giant slayers, even in this time in the cave. I don't know what cave you're in right now. I don't know what maybe hope deferred you're experiencing right now. I don't know what the bummers are in your life. I don't know what marriage looks like, or maybe kids. I don't know whatever it all looks like, but maybe there's just some disappointment. There's some discouragement. I thought it was going to be, and I hoped it was going to happen, and I wish whatever, and instead I got this cave. God's in the cave with you. God is in it, and he's sending people around you. That's going to be awesome. Don't give up. Don't lose hope. Don't lose heart. Double down on that cave. Dig into what God has you in right now. Mine the gold out of that cave. And I just can't help but believe God will raise up a warrior that's ready to leave. When he walks out of that cave to the castle, he will be ready to leave. And that's my prayer for you today. That's a wrap. You heard me?